Welcome back to another episode. And today I have a dear friend, and he was also a client of my club, Randy Dirks. Randy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ken, we've had a lot of experiences together at another organization. Just appreciated all you do. And I've loved the journey that I've had with you over the last several months. So glad to be here.
Yeah, Randy, you have mentioned it. You met me before I had kids, and you saw me struggle trying to train and develop and mentor kids, and then working. We both work in the same organization, but then I left, and then you've kind of done your own things. You're kind of back, and you also started your own business at the same time. Walk us through what was that business like come November of 2025.
Okay, so I got introduced to a gentleman about a year and a half ago, Donald Miller, and he writes about StoryBrand. It's a whole communication process. And I began to say to myself, well, this is a great process that we can use at the nonprofit where I still work. I've been a development consultant for 28 years at three nonprofits. So always sharing a story with people. And so I learned about Donald Miller's approach of sharing stories and connecting, identifying who is the hero in your story. And I really like that framework. So then I began to think toward the end of last year, okay, you've got this 28 years of experience, expertise in the development world. Why not share that expertise with other people and see where it goes? And maybe that can become a sideline opportunity for you to learn and connect more with people. So I said, okay, let's see how I could do that. Well, maybe I could learn how to be a podcaster. I'm watching podcasts all the time on a variety of topics. And I see people being interviewed. I see the number of likes and people viewing things. And I also did a little my own research. And I said, if I want to start a business, what's the best way to do that? And it just kept coming back. You need to start your own podcast. Well, I am not a guru in the podcast world. As you can see by the color of my hair, I've been around the block a really long time. So I'm not intuitive into that world. So I said, okay, I got to find some people that I can do this with. And lo and behold, your name came up, and a colleague that you work with that I also knew from the organization we were with in the past, and I found out that you guys are helping people start their own podcast, and I said, okay, I gotta dive in. I want to dive in, and you guys had some great expertise, so that's how it started, and then you led me and I think a few others through a series of weeks of how do you start from nothing, and literally I had nothing. Um, I mean, I had spoken in front of people before, but I didn't know all the mechanics and the structure and how you put everything together. So you really laid the groundwork, and those 7 weeks, I put together my own 5 podcasts. I said, "Wow, this is pretty cool." And the expertise you gave me, I'm jumping ahead a little bit now. I know we'll come back to it. So today I finished my 51st podcast,
That's
and
awesome.
just really love it. It's opening up a new world. We can talk about that.
Yeah. Well, Randy, what's really cool is I remember when you first started, you didn't really have a name for the podcast. You had a semblance of an idea. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm jumping in. And I remember when you reached out and said, hey, I'm interested in doing this. And I told Dan, who's a business partner, like, hey, if he does this, he's going to crush it. Because we know a lot about your character, your abilities, really the things that make someone successful. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I wanted to go back to something you said earlier. You had 28 years of experience in the development world, and you were like, hey, maybe I should become a development consultant. Was there ever anything in your mind that said, man, there's already a lot of consultants out there. I can't compete with those guys. They're probably better. What kind of gave you the step in the right direction to say I'm going to move forward with this business and even do podcasting? Because you might be like, there's a lot of great podcasters out there. Why me?
Sure. Well, actually, I in the work where I'm at, I've had 3 people that were consultants that helped me over the 28 years. So I knew there were a plethora of people out there You work in the nonprofit world, it's a challenging world to begin with. And so I knew that there was a niche out there for that kind of a person. And when I began to look at myself to answer your question, I said, okay, what is it that I bring that's unique, that makes me stand out, maybe a little bit above the crowd in this whole world, where someone would say, okay, I want to connect with Randy on this. So there's a few things that I'll bring out. Number one, and maybe StoryBrand helped in this way, but I going way back, I've always focused on story, the importance of story, changed lives, those kind of things. So I knew, okay, I've got something that maybe other nonprofit consultants aren't focusing a lot on, and that's how do you craft a well composed story, because people give to stories of lives changed, of emotion. So that was sort of a bedrock thing that I held on to. The second thing that I began to realize more and more is that the 28 years I've worked a lot with what we call major donors. So that's a smaller segment in the nonprofit world, but it's really how do you build relationships with people? And so I've focused on doing that really over my whole career, not only in the nonprofit world, but prior to doing this. How do you build trust based relationships? How do you care for people? How do you enter into their world? How do you connect with them? So I knew, okay, I've got something in that area. Yeah, other people have that, but it's a trait that I've honed and developed. So that was something. The third thing that really helped me, and you pointed this out in our training, is your own network, people that you already know. So I knew two people that were presidents of nonprofits. These are people that I've known for one for 12 years, another one for 30 years. And I found out that they both had their own nonprofits. And I just had a conversation with them. I just said, hey, this is what I do. I'd love to be involved with you. I love the cause that you're doing. And they both said, yeah. So those are the three things that sort of stood out to me.
Well, and Randy, what's amazing about that is that you talked about like, here's my expertise, here's what I know I could bring to the table, and that's what I loved about you, Randy, is that there's so many people who struggle to like, oh, I want to go out there, I want to go do the thing, and you have to almost be reminded of like, no, no, this is the God given abilities that I have, and the experience that I've acquired. I know I can help people. And there was this belief in yourself and what God has done in your life that you were like, okay, I can go do this. And then we came in and we really just kind of guided. Like the way I like to think about it is like, that's why I told again, Dan, I was like, he's going to crush it because you have all the right materials and the character for it. So walk us through, how did you feel about the process? So the first 21 days was the boot camp, the solo podcast challenge. How did you feel about that? And then I'll talk about my club, how when you started going through that process.
Sure. Well, I really liked how the 21 days was set out to begin with. It was sequential, it was smaller steps, even though some of those smaller steps, it's like, oh, you mean tomorrow I have to do a 3 minute podcast? But because you walked people through in a very orderly way, you gave them the technical skills, you gave them the context of how you do things, but it was the kind of thing where day one you're doing something, day two you're adding on it, you're building on it. So when we got to the doing the first podcast, I think that was day seven,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. I was sort of like a little no, I'm not caught off guard, but oh, I thought I was going to wait later. They're going to give me some more insights as to how I'm supposed to do this, but really the insight is doing it yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I felt the framework was there. It was relatively easy to follow. You stayed connected with us. You followed up, and good assignments that we were able to track on. So the process, I found that by the time I got to the end, yeah, I still obviously have a lot to learn in the podcasting world, but I had a foundation that wasn't leaky, that wasn't falling apart. I could build on it, and that's really what I did going into the My Club program. Is it wasn't now more the technical side. There's still things to learn on the technical side, But now it's more the coaching side where you are coming alongside over these last many weeks. And we're really now talking about my ideal client, the people that I am working with. Who are they? Where are they at? What am I thinking of doing as a way of reaching out to this ideal client? Maybe some already that I have. I've mentioned a few of them to you. There's a few others that I would say, well, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And you would say, okay, how about this area? Because obviously you bring in expertise from a wide range of situations you've been in, things you've done. So then I would say, "Oh, Ken, that's a great way of, I use LinkedIn more and more, and you help me in the beginning looking at my LinkedIn page. You say, what about doing this? I would make those changes. Different ways of doing articles. I post a lot articles on LinkedIn. I remember when I had what was it, 325 subscribers to my articles, and
Yeah.
now I've got 440. So, it's like the things that I'm doing are beginning to work. And so the work that you've done personally with me has been building, but really on the standpoint of now putting it down to a specific client that I'm working with and helping to make that even more productive and effective.
Yeah, and what we provided, I want to make sure everybody is aware of. Like we provided a system, a framework, but you, Randy, provided the character and the thing that needed to work, right? So let's talk about that. But now that you're done with Mike Club, right? Can you tell people, if you're okay with it, the results? Like what happened? How many clients did you get? What kind of revenue did you make? So that people could be like, okay, what actually occurred at the end of going through this process?
Sure. Yeah. So the two paying customers I have now. I'll talk about some other situations that are really on the wings to develop. But the first one is a person that I've known for 12 years. And so my consultancy work with them, they're raising funds for two building projects. One is 325,000, and the other one is a little over a million. And these are going to morph into larger. This is like stage one,
Yeah.
and over the next 6 to 9 months. And so what I did is knowing my background, fundraising, knowing their context of who they're working with, I just meshed those together and did a lot of research on where are the most critical points that I can add value to what they're doing. And then based upon that, I developed a consulting framework that I could use. And then I just did a lot of research. I'm new to this field, so I said, well, what should I charge? It's not like I could call somebody up and say, hey, by the way, what are you charging for your consulting work? Unless I knew the person individually.
Yeah.
So I just use my AI platforms. Perplexity, Claude are the two primary ones that I go to. Gemini also a little bit once in a while. And I just said, okay, this is who I am. This is my experience. This is what I'm going to offer. And often another thing, it's a little trick that I've figured out. I decided to find out who are the top seven fundraising consultants in the United States. People have got LinkedIn, articles, blogs, podcasts. So I found out who those people were. And anytime I have a question, i.e., I need to know what to charge for a certain service, I'm always asking these people. So I ask it on AI, I give the context, they give the feedback. And that gave me a real framework as to what I could charge. And so then I remember talking specifically to you about that contract. And I was saying, I think I'm going to aim it at this particular figure. And you said, well, what do you think about a little higher figure than that? And I gave a little rationale where I was, the way I was. And then over the weekend, I said, I think there's some value in what Ken was saying. And so that first contract is for $4,500 a month. It's going to be, it's month by month, but this is going to be a long range because they've got significant building projects. The second contract I have is for $3,300 a month. And that's with a person that found me on LinkedIn. And again, you got to start getting yourself out there. So I post articles twice a week. There are articles that I post are based upon my podcasts. So I did a podcast this morning with a guy that's a fractional CFO. That's a whole other story how I designed the questions, but now I took that podcast script and I put it into a LinkedIn article that has an attractive heading and sublines and whatever else. So that's how this person found me. It was the articles that you helped me, Ken, write. And so that's a 3,300 contract. So those two are $7,700 a month, which is actually exceeds what my income is from my regular job, which is pretty cool. And now I have a third client, this person I've known for a long period of time. I met with him and his communications person, went through what I would do. I really want to look at, and this is another point, what are the problems this organization is facing? So this is a development company, nonprofit. He started it 18 years ago. They're at 1.4 million in revenue. He wanted to move it to 1.8. Add another $400,000. That's another 30% in 9 months.
Yeah.
I said, that's pretty aggressive. But I developed a plan based upon my expertise. I presented it to him. Yesterday, we had a meeting with the board chair. I went through the whole plan with them, but I also said, I want you, and I have this is maybe a little later on in the conversation. I have a value add that I give back to people. And in this case, it's what are the indicators of financial health in your nonprofit? I developed 10 of those. So when we came to the conclusion of the call yesterday, they said, well, why don't you get back to us and give us your ranges? If you offer package A, what it would be, package B. And I said, well, I can certainly do that, but I would like you to take this assessment first because it tells me where you really are at in a nonprofit. What are your problems? What are your pain points? So that's a critical thing. And then I can take their information and say, in order for me to meet this problem that you have, it's going to cost you X. So if I'm planning on saying that's going to be a $5,500 monthly engagement with them if they take what I would recommend they do. And then on the side, I'll end with this one. I have others in the wings that I'm developing, but I'm doing a pro bono for 1 month with a person that I met on LinkedIn. Fabulous nonprofit that she has, but she is really struggling. And so when I was interviewing her for a podcast, I told her who I was and what I did, and she said to me, "Oh, I would really like to hire you as my as my as my consultant if I could afford it." Well, I realized she couldn't, so I said, "How about if I give you a month free? Normally, my fee for the work I would do for you, which is just communication, it's not the full blown deal, is 1,500 a month, but I'll give you a month free. It's not a lot of time off my back and helping with some Facebook posts, some social media, a few events." And I want to get dollars in her bank account because I believe in her. And if it all works out well, then that's another client. So that was a little longer, but that's the story.
Well, Randy, what I love is I don't want people to miss this, how you had a value ladder and the way you were indicating. I know a lot of beginner consultants, they just jump on like, oh, give me your offer. And they start sharing like, oh, here's option A, B, and C. And you're like, no, 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 time out. Do this assessment real quick. Let me see where you're really at. Let's diagnose. And that's actually giving you more power and more leverage. Um, and I want you guys to all hear this. We have a framework that Randy you used to get these clients, and every single time you're like, wow, it worked. And what I love about it is that, and I tell people, the process is simple once you get through all the tech stuff, right, of podcasting, but the process is simple that people might be like, oh, that's it, right? And I'm like, yeah, we don't want you to be with us for the next 10 years. It's like you learn it, you're going to go do it, you're growing your business. Praise God, let's move on. But what I love is that you're starting to take it to the next level, different things that you're learning, different things that you're growing. But we've been teasing this out, Randy. I want you to talk to people who are like, hey, I was able to do all these things, but there are certain, character qualities and abilities that you have that I want people to know that it takes to actually make a successful business. So I know this is hard for some people to toot their own horn, but I need you to toot your own horn for a second and say, like, what are those things that make a successful consultant slash business owner?
Yeah. Well, you articulated one in the beginning, and that's regardless of who is out there, and there's a lot of big players out there. I was coached by consultants that are big players. They run at higher dollar amounts. But it is the fact that I have something of value to offer to somebody else or a group of people. And yeah, you may be younger in your career experience, and so that's where the challenges come. But be a reader, be a learner. Learn as much as you can about your craft, about your field, about your category. Narrow it down. Okay. Sometimes our problem is that we become really broad. I want to serve everybody. I want everybody as a customer. That's probably not going to work very well. But if you can narrow it down to a certain ideal client, somebody that you want to serve. And so that's what I did. I said, I've got some expertise in this area. I want to develop it more and I want to connect with those kind of people. So now I go on LinkedIn. And I've got a fairly robust group of people I work with, but through LinkedIn, I'm being introduced to who they know. And so I know I used to go a little bit broader in who I wanted to reach out to. Now I'm really narrowing it down. And can you help me in that to say, okay, who are the decision makers? Who are the owners of nonprofits? Who are the presidents? Those are the people I need to be talking to. And so I do that. I just had an interview with a head of a school, a Christian school, before I got on with you, and we're going to do a podcast together. I'm building a relationship with him. At the end of the podcast, I'm going to offer him that value add assessment that he can do, and actually his database person will do it, and then that'll give him what Jim Collins in Good to Great calls the brutal facts. If I
Yeah.
was to come in and say to him, "Hey, John, I can do X for $5,000 a month," or if you want to do just W rather than X, it's 3,500. But I don't know his context or her context. And so that would be the next step is find something of value add that will then address a legitimate problem or challenge that that person has. And when you can do that in a way that they say, "Oh yeah, that's my problem. Could you help me with it?" Okay. Now you've changed the table. It's not like you're coming in, but they're approaching you. Okay. So that would be another area that I would say would be really valuable. And then be willing to try new things. When I first started the podcast, I was working with one particular I was working with the business community, thinking that what I could do could help them get customers, paying customers for the services they provided. I tried that, and well, it wasn't quite as effective as what I thought it would or what I hoped it would be. So then I switched to a different field that was really more aligned with who I was, and that enables me to speak more professionally into the lives of these people. So those would be a few areas.
Yeah, Randy, those are all great. I also want to toot your horn for a second. Things that I think made you successful. You had this, everything you talked about, you had the strategy, and but there's two things. One, your ability to take action and execute, right? There are a lot of people who many times they have great ideas, but they don't execute. And you're like, all right, I remember I'd give you ideas. You're like, you text me back the next day. You're like, I did one, two, three. I'm going to do five next week. Like you were just executing constantly. And then the second one is consistency. You were just saying, hey, I'm being consistent. I'm working through this, and I'm helping it, which made your progress go so much faster. So
Yeah.
my encouragement to those who are listening to this is that if you're out there and you're wondering, how do I be successful? Be like Randy. Just execute. Even if it's messy, even if you don't know, like you, Randy, just mentioned, you've had to pivot several times, but that's okay, right? Execute and just be consistent. Like just show up and do the work. Randy, before we wrap up, I don't want people to miss this. You right now have $7,700 in revenue coming in, and then you might have another one which might be 13, but you also have several things in the pipeline because of this process.
Right.
So it's not like it's over tomorrow, right? Like you still have a lot going on.
For sure.
um what's the goal for you? Like what's the impact that you're trying to make?
Okay, well, I'll talk on that on two frames. I'll say my goal for the people I serve, I'm serving the nonprofit world. So these are people that believe in their cause, they're passionate for their cause, and it's making life changing transformations in the lives of whether it's a medical, one guy I'm talking to has a medical health related nonprofit serving people in West Africa. Um, powerful transformation that he's making there. So the thing that I look at the frame of that nonprofit is changing people's lives, really, for not only here in this world, but when you think of the legacy of what happens to people's lives, the influence they have on so many other people. So, the one thing that I always say, I want to keep working in areas where I know I'm making a significant difference for other people. And so, when I look at nonprofit world, and I'm focusing more on the smaller nonprofits, let's say under 3 million avenue annual revenue. So these are not the big universities. That's a whole different league. But I know that they're under resourced. And so I feel as though there's something, because of my expertise, I can really meet something that's going to be helpful for them. That's number one. Number two is I have a daughter and a son-in-law and 5 grandchildren, and I want to leave them a legacy. And by that I mean something more than just pictures of myself. Although that would be nice that they would hang a picture of old grandpa on the wall. Um, it comes down to, okay, maybe some land that I would be able to purchase, maybe a home that could actually go to them, maybe something I could do, where we're actually doing this right now, where some of the profitability of what I'm earning is going to go and help my two oldest grandsons go to a private Christian school that their parents cannot afford.
Yeah.
Okay. So by gaining this extra income over and above, my regular job would not have allowed me to do that for my grandchildren. I'm
And
also thinking about how I can put some insurance plans together for them. So when they get 25, 30, 35, if they want to cash it in and have I'd love to be involved with them, whatever they do with that. I'm planning to live at least to 100. So I'm going to see them get married and have children.
love it.
um, Investing in them as a family, okay, so that I think of, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about leaving an inheritance to your children's children. So I want to be able to do that. And then I have some dreams for my wife Rebecca and myself, as financially what we're where we could be. We have a big dream of some things that we want to do. We worked overseas for many years. We know what it's like for international workers to be stressed out and challenged, and they come back and they need just a place to rest and maybe get some professional counseling. My wife that's her background. So we want to buy a piece of property on some water and some woods, and those don't come cheap. And so the goal is to create enough revenue. My goal, through my regular job and then my consultant work, in the next year, to be able to be at $250,000 annually a year, which is, probably going to have to step me up into a couple more contracts, clients that I have. So those are the goals that I've set for myself, and they're worthy goals because I see that it's building into my family's life, my life, the lives of other people.
Randy, and you're an inspiration. I will tell you that. Like, even just hearing about your goals and the legacy you want to leave behind. A lot of people want to just sit back and be like, I just want to be in the beach all day, which, granted, you might have some of those days, right? That you're going to be doing that. But long term, your vision is, I want to do this for God's glory. I want to impact people like who truly need it. And you're seeing an impact in society. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's why I want to share your story to people, because it's like, you're doing it, you're crushing it, and you're using a simple framework, and you have the abilities as well to do it. And anybody can do this. And I want to encourage anybody who's listening to this, like, you can do this. Just put yourself in the right group of people, put yourself in the right conditions, and get to work. Don't feel like, oh man, I can't do it. Randy said it before. He's not the greatest tech person, right? He was just like, he didn't know anything about podcasting, but you learned it. And this was what, back in November? So, and when we're recording this, it's April. You have 51 episodes. I mean, that's incredible. There's most people, Randy, that like they quit after 7 episodes.
For sure.
They're done and they don't record anymore. You've passed that. Everybody, like, you are now in the top like 100 podcasters because you're podcast because you're showing up, you're recording, you're posting, and you're growing your business, which is, at the end of the day, that's the game, right? If you just grew a podcast and there wasn't revenue coming behind it, you probably would have stopped earlier. Uh, but you're seeing the results, and that's the beautiful part about that. Randy, before we let you go, any last words?
Yeah, you mentioned the word consistency a little earlier, and so much hinges on that. Life happens. We get off track, maybe one day, one week, but you have to have so clear in your mind your vision. What is it? What is your why? I know Simon Sinek talks about knowing your why, but you got to bring it down from what these other people are saying and say, what does that mean to me? Where do I want to be in 5 years from now? And if I don't change anything, I will still be where I am 5 years from now. But if I have a goal that is realistic, it's challenging, but I say to myself, I can do this. And I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I know you are too. And so I say I can do this with His power. And so sometimes I have to say yeah, it's a little bit beyond me. I'm not just trying to pull myself up by my bootstraps, but I'm saying, uh, Lord, you made me, you created me, you give me abilities. Now I want to be faithful and use these to the max. Whatever you created me for, I want that. I don't want to settle for anything less. And so that takes a visionary perspective. Somehow keep that in front of you. Keep talking about it. If you're married, talk about that with your spouse. If you have a great friend, talk about that with your friend. Keep that in front of you so you don't get eclipsed by the all the things that can happen in life, the clouds that roll in and out, and sometimes there's some unexpected things that happen. We know that, but you got to be able to say to yourself, I still have my why. Nobody's going to take that from me because I am doing it for these reasons. And once that's clear in your mind, you have a lot to stand on.
Randy, that is a great word, and I'll end it with that. Thank you so much for being on the show. And for those of you who are still listening, I encourage you, find Randy Dirks on LinkedIn. If you know a nonprofit who can use a consultant, go check him out, right? Because he's doing great work and he's actually helping people really, truly reach their goals. So, Randy, thank you again so much for being on the show.
And thanks, Ken, for getting me to this place.